But yeah, I mean, a big part of these sessions for me are to kind of, uh, I don't really consider myself a teacher, but I think we can. I think the best way to learn is conversation, regardless of whether you're in a classroom or you're learning how to code or you're studying the depths of language and poetry. Nothing is going to be conversation. I feel like.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Socratic method, when you're questioning and you're actually made an active participant of the learning, which is kind of like a dialogue, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think that's also a huge part of why the Quran is as powerful as it is because it is a
Yeah,
conversation, right? It's a
absolutely.
conversation between uh, God and His creation, but also like there's an intimate conversation happening between God and His messenger, His son.
Subhanallah, absolutely. Allamahul Bayan, right? That Bayan, the in betweenness, the two-ness is required, right?
Yeah,
I mean, Bayan
yeah,
is eloquence, right, in that particular context. But for us in Urdu, Bayan is also just a statement.
yeah,
And the root word kind of always jumped up at me as being ban, um, as in ban al Aqwami Sata. So this is just from Urdu,
yeah,
that the root word was very clear, and I had to check it, and I was very happy when it was confirmed. But it requires at least two to have a dialogue, but and that's how you learn eloquence. That is communication, eloquent communication, or a depth of meaning. You require an interlocutor,
yeah.
and Quran does
Absolutely.
it. Quran does it.
And so, yeah. So, Jazakumullah khair, of course, for your participation and your perspective and your interlocution. I think that's the word. uh, but also just your presence and people in the chat as well too. I don't know. I don't know when I'll get a chance to upload these things. I think I'm weeks behind now or months behind. But even the people in the sessions that just put a like here and there or read the summaries.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's definitely a community, even if it's a strange, ephemeral, coming and going kind of
Mm-hmm.
kind of community. Okay, Bismillah. So, welcome to another session of Lisan Lab, or our semiotic laboratory, our experimentation and pushing the limits of language. Um, Lots of changes in the app. I think I went over a lot of them yesterday, but some really big ones recently. Actually, within the past 20 minutes, I just pushed this update, so it's a little buggy, but um, it should be very cool, inshallah. So I think we left off at Al Mutakabbir, right? Just we're reviewing real quick. So I don't want to spend too much time on this because I think I exhausted everybody, including myself last time trying to do that. Um, but I guess we can just jump into Al Khaliq, Al Bari, Al Musawwir, right? Did we do those? I don't remember if we did it. Well, it doesn't matter. We can go through it really quickly. So Al Khaliq, uh, the creator of all things. I like the dua that we mentioned a couple of times, which is where you can say "A'udhu billahi mimma khalaqa wa dhara'a wa bara'a." So it kind of gives you these like levels of creation, which we talked about as like khalq being the most basic, and then the next dhara'a is not in the dhari' is not in the list of 99 names, but it's like an in between level, I guess you could say, between khalaqa and bara'a or al-bari', which is the next name here, follows the same form. And bari' here has the translation of like evolver, so kind of that next level of like process and intermediary between the very base level and then the next level, which is al-musawwir. And I think for al-khaliq, for this root, we chose khalaq as the etamin, or the main idea, and that being smoothness, but also can be roughness. So the idea of something being worn out is present in this root in the most like concrete sense. So then al-bari', I don't know if I selected an etamin here. No. Let's see. Innocence. I think that was the main idea that we kind of went to. So bara'a, or absolution, is another way to think of it. Innocence is kind of the main idea that ties this kind of evolution thing, or a process level of creation. And then musawwir, the next name, we translate as like the fashioner, right? Or that external level of creation, you could say, styling, or the most surface level, you can kind of say in another way. And there's a lot of ideas here that kind of ground this. Like musawwir is also like a photographer. I think the base root here, the base verb here, means to like extend your neck forward. And then I think the interesting thing that we also kind of mentioned here is how this is one of those names that uses the causal or the instrumental active participle instead of the previous names, which use the basic agent or doer form fa'il. So this one is using the intensive causative, so mufa'il. And it was kind of an interesting question that I think about a lot, is like why some roots have some forms and why some don't. And that kind of is also just a question of like what's the difference between like fa'il and mufa'il, or mufa'il. So you can also think of it as like what's the difference between like amin, right, someone who believes, who currently believes, or mu'min, right, also translated as believer, but it's like a step removed, right? So that meme in the beginning kind of denotes causality, kind of denotes instrumentality. So it's a little bit removed from, I guess you can say, from the idea itself of the doer, or the actor. So it's a little bit more removed. Is a tough word, but causative or instrumental is, another way of kind of abstracting it. Again, really abstract words. I like to think of like the different forms as like different shades of meaning, instead of like just grammatical. But yeah, we've talked about that a lot, so no need to dwell on it. I think it'll come up in one of the other names again with a better example. So okay, let's move on then. So al-Khaliq, al-Bari', al-Musawwir, those names are kind of all tied together, and then they also mark the end of that. That's the names listed in that surah al-Hashr, I believe. So it's like 11 names all listed in a row. So the next ones, we can kind of do these in pairs, I think, too. So Ghaffar and Qahhar, same pattern, same morphological pattern. This is the intensive agent now, as opposed to the basic verb, which we came across with al-Khaliq and al-Bari'. So that's fa'al, and then fa'al is that double geminate pattern, and you have Ghaffar and Qahar from that. So Ghaffar, as we said before, the one who always forgives or constantly forgives. And the base meaning that we kind of tied it to is covering, right? Ghafar al-shay' means to cover something. And then Qahar is the compeller. And looks like we have someone else. That's Mom. Assalamu alaikum, Mom. We're just in the middle of a quick review here. So Ghaffar, Qahar, and then Wahhab also, same form, and Razaq and Fattah all have that same fa'al form. So unless there's any thoughts here, we can kind of just skip through these because they're all pretty straightforward. And we've talked about them at length. I'll just show the English here as well. And use this opportunity to kind of show off this new feature here. So I've been talking about data validation a lot because I think that's one of the most unique features of this app. So let me just show you. Of course, this is not working. Sorry, everyone. Okay, so let's just do it this way. Technical difficulties. Okay. So, sorry, everybody. Okay, so the main new feature that is really cool is this node inspector thing. So if you click on any node and you click on inspect node, you can validate some of the data here. So as you can see here, there's only a few of them. So the wazn, which is the most important, I think, and that's the morphological form. So for example, all of the names, let me just do it this way so I don't have to keep switching.
Screen share working? Oh yeah, okay, it's working now.
Yeah, so you can see it, right?
Yeah, it disappeared for a while, but it's back.
Oh, okay. Sorry guys, I'm all over the place. Okay, so like with these names, which I will show you in a second. Okay, so like these names, for example, right, that we just talked about, Ghaffar, Qahar, Wahhab, Razzaq, Fattah, all these have the same form. So in the node inspector, you can edit the morphological form. So Ghaffar here should say fa'al. So this is wrong, and we can fix it. I can't really type Arabic on my laptop, so I usually do all the Arabic stuff on the phone because it's easier to type Arabic there. But all this other, but the English stuff we can edit. Like for example here, Afkar should be like that. And then you can approve it, and then you can save the changes, and it'll get locked. So that's the coolest thing here. There's also like a classification property. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with that yet, and I'll probably add some more properties as well. You can see the definition here as well. I'm going to improve this a little bit so you can see the root, because that will help if you're doing the morphological validation. But yeah, if anybody wants to help with the English or the Urdu, or if you know Spanish, that will be great as well. Cool. So let me go back here real quick. Okay, so
I'm sorry, who wrote the Urdu translations?
my good friend ChatGPT. A lot of them are absolutely bonkers and don't make any sense. So I don't know how some of them got there. Actually, let's, if we can look at that again. I think.
So it says Sarposh, which means like something that covers your head.
Yeah,
For
something
Hassan.
must have happened. So with a couple of these, I think it used this it translated this English property, which I don't know where this one came from either. So there's still some bugs here, and it still has to be cleaned up. But some of them are okay. So again, and you can do this for anything, right? So like if you expand the root here, let's turn off English because.
Right, so I think because here it says coif and head
Yeah.
covering. So
Yeah, I
that's the
think-
translation they picked. And it looks like that's also the word in Spanish. Unless the
Yeah.
Spanish one is wrong. I don't know.
Yeah. There's a subset of words that have completely wrong translations. I don't know how that got there, but they're not all like that. So it's main thing for me is just the morphology. That's the most important thing, because there's like 50,000 words, and if we can get all those validated, we can do some really powerful searches in the Quran or in any Arabic text, right? You can like say, show me every single time Rahman appears in the Quran, or every single time a word with the same morphological pattern appears in the Quran. Or you can say like, how many times does what are the most common concepts that you see associated with Rahman in the Quran, right? There's nothing that can do that right now. Or not just Rahman, but something with that morphological form. You see here I have like these forms, which are the blue nodes that are connected to the words. These are grammatical forms, and they're also not super accurate. So once we have all the morphological data, I'll switch this to just the grammatical, and that will be the default. But you can see the morphological forms for any of the verbs. So all verbs should have, I think, their morphological forms. Yeah. So this is already kind of a cool feature. I think you have to switch the context, for example, but because you won't find any. So this is basically showing you the form of this. Excuse me, the form of this word. So this form here is attached to these, and these are all accurate because these were actually done by Lane himself. He put numbers corresponding to each of the verb forms. So these are all accurate. So if you did something like right now, this is set to the 99 names. So if you expanded this form, it would show you all of the verbs that have this form in the 99 names. You won't get any, obviously, because there are no verbs in the 99 names. But if we switch it to the lexicon, then you can do something like that, and you can see these are all the verbs in Lane's lexicon that have that af'ala form, which is so cool. But you can also do it, I guess, for the Quran. That probably doesn't work yet because I just deleted the Quran, but that's basically, that's the Quran. basically the feature there. So yeah, very excited about that. That should keep me very busy when I'm not at my computer and allow me to update this stuff. I'll post more about it in the group, inshallah. But yeah, if you're bored and you want to help out with some data validation, now you can very easily. And subhanAllah, it's amazing that this is even possible because, a couple weeks ago when I mentioned this in the group chat, I thought the fastest way to do it was with an Excel sheet because I thought it would take me weeks to set this up in the app. But the technology is just moving so fast that, things that I thought would take me weeks a month ago, I can now do in minutes. Okay, how about we just jump into Al-Khafid, right? Because I think
Yes, please, thank God.
because I think I'm trying to do a bit too much with the review. And maybe I should just do that on my own time and then write something that we can share. Unless there are any thoughts on any of the past names, anything that's been lurking deep within you that you want to share.
I think afterwards we could group all the names into the different morphological patterns, like as in a table, and see what comes out.
Yeah, I think I want to do something like that as well, so that you can in the nodes for the 99 names, for example, we would have something that would help us we can add more data points here basically. So we can add for example, how many times does al-khafid actually appear in the Quran? It would be 0 in this case, right? So that would be kind of cool to see in the main list here, yeah, and then showing the morphological form right next to it would actually be cool too, since this list is kind of skimpy and doesn't have much to show besides the names. Okay, so anybody have any thoughts on Al-Khafid before I jump into some of the notes I had?
Jump ahead.
Okay. So Al-Khafid is our 20th name, I think. And it's a name that I've been thinking about a lot. I think the names, I don't know if it's coincidence or fate, or nothing is coincidence, right? They always seem to have something to do with what's going on in my life at the time. And I guess one of the things I've been thinking about with Al-Khafid is the idea of pacing yourself. And that's why I kind of started the review last week, because I was just doing so many things. We had taken a break. We had gone through 20 names already. I just felt like maybe it was time to kind of slow down and kind of humble ourselves, I guess, or at least for myself, humble myself before the task at hand, which is going through these 99 names, which is such a monumental task. And, we're writing about them and recording data and all this stuff. So that was kind of one of the ideas that I had was to just kind of slow down with this project. Khaft, as you might know or might not know, can switch here to English, see what the translation is usually associated with lowering. Here it's translated as the reducer, the abaser. As Allah, raises the ranks of anybody that He wishes, which is the next name of Rafi', and then He also lowers the ranks of anybody that He wishes. So in that sense, the idea of lowering oneself, salah is another idea that comes to mind a lot, because that's a big part of our worship, is to lower ourselves.
Mhm.
But then there's also a bit of a contrariness, I guess, or contradiction in that, when we lower ourselves before Allah, right, that's actually the highest place
Mhm.
that we can have in on this earth, right? So it's a bit of a paradox is the word I was looking for, not contradiction. Sorry. So a bit of a paradox, and that kind of gets me thinking about the whole frames thing that I've kind of beaten to death over these sessions a bit. But the idea of some of the most fundamental ideas in language being uh, we can describe them in these fundamental frames. So one that I often talk about is cutting and joining, right? That's often something that you find a lot in the Arabic language, especially with some of the oldest words. And then I also talked about loss and gain a lot, right? Because that's the maybe if cutting and joining is the most fundamental, the deepest kind of fundamental frame, then at the other opposite end, right, you have gain and loss. That's the grandest scale. That's the highest level of abstraction instead of the deepest, right? Because that's what everything kind of comes down to in terms of our fate, right? Either we are winners in the end, or we are losers, right? And that's kind of how our our entire lives will be. That's the scale of our entire lives, but it's also the scale of every day or every moment that we go through, every hour. Um, and then in between, there are also some other frames that we can kind of think of, right? And one that I hadn't thought of at all was expansion and contraction until we came across al-qabid, al-basit. So we talked about that at length, and I think that is also another fundamental frame. And I'm still, yeah, I think Ammar in some of our past conversations, for him, he felt that like expansion and contraction was like the most like the basest kind of fundamental movement or something like that. I still think cutting and joining may be more fundamental, but this is, I guess, not that important. But I guess what it brings me to is then what comes right after Qabid and Basit, which is Khafid, the name that we're looking at now, and Rafi', the next name, right? So the lower and the abaser. So then that's another frame that we can kind of add. So if you have cutting and joining is the most base, then maybe extraction, contraction is the next one. Then maybe high and low, because those actually follow right in the list. And then maybe loss and gain, at some farther end. Maybe we find some others in the middle there.
Also, maybe grounding.
Sorry? Is it grounding? Is my connection okay? Can you guys hear me? Or I've been having some internet issues.
We can hear you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, there may be many other frames in between that, but in another sense, you can think of it, in the kind of very mystical Ibn Arabi sense of, even these fundamental frames, as basic as they are also just limits of our perception, also just illusions. Everything is one or nothing, right? Everything is or isn't. So, and that's kind of how I feel about khafid and rafi', al-khafid and al-rafi', right? About high and low, right? The idea of lowness and highness. Is it real? Is it an illusion? Is it just a convenient kind of frame that we use in order to coordinate with others and with the world and navigate the world? Maybe, I think that's a question that everyone kind of has to. I mean, you don't have to think about it at all. Obviously, I'm sure most people just take it for granted that there's high and low, and they don't think twice about it. Yeah, but so that's another idea that I might have, is to add some like a fundamental frame property to these nodes, and then we can maybe start looking at very high level kind of classifications of words in the application as well. Sorry, my notes are all over the place here. Okay, so I guess we can expand the root here and kind of just see. This is a more minimal root, I guess, than we've seen. A lot of roots that we've seen so far are very, very full, but it looks like we only have a few ideas here. But I think the etem here is just going to be, or the heart of the meaning here is just going to be lowering, right? The idea of that which is low. Very intuitive. Not a lot to say about that, I suppose. So unless we have any thoughts, I think we can just jump to the Quran. Any thoughts about fundamental frames, or even, are you satisfied with the?
I had something to add.
Please.
So sorry, I'm gonna have to look it up because I I wrote it in the chat. But yeah, this idea of like what is fundamental and what isn't. Like, I guess what you mentioned, Ammar, saying that Qabd and Bast are fundamental, and you need to like figure out which one you're in. And if you're in Qabd, then you only have one thing to do, which is do sabr, I think. Whereas Bast, even though it feels better, it's more jamali, you might have more duties to God. But then I'm thinking about like Khafid and Rafi, because in terms of like, if you think about like how we're always, even if we go with the non-metaphor of the qalb, it's always moving, it's always turning. And so at no point, I think one of my teachers told me this, that like, if you're not going up, you're going down. Like, there's no being stationary in this. Like, like in spiritually, there's no such thing as being stationary. Like, you can't be stationary. So as long as you're not improving yourself. In fact, there's a hadith where Rasulullah ﷺ said that whoever's like yesterday, tomorrow is not better than their yesterday, or something like that, right? Astaghfirullah. But basically implying that your every single day should be better than your like previous day. Or like you should get better, like you should improve every day, otherwise you're in loss. Something like that was the general sense of it. I don't remember verbatim. Astaghfirullah. But yeah, so then it's like, so I think like then that also becomes really fundamental. Up versus down. Not up versus down, but like rising versus falling, I guess. Falling sounds a bit intense. But it is, dropping, I don't know. Being lowered. All of those have different things. But it's so interesting because in the Quran where it says Khafidatul Rafi'ah about, I think, the Day of Judgment, that it is a day that will lower some and raise some, like lowering and raising. And then it's like, just that's the ayah, that's the whole ayah, Khafidatul Rafi'ah. And it's so interesting because subhanAllah, that means it's such a powerful description. That's the day, and it's not a day, it's not described with Qabd or Bast, or I don't know. I guess it's a day of joining, if you want to speak in terms of, because Hashr also means like Jama, right? It means like a day, it's a day of union, but it's not a Jamali union for many people.
Right, yeah.
For most people. So then, because it's like a terrifying kind of being brought together, وَجَمَعْنَاكُمْ فَجَمَعْنَاهُمْ جَمْعًا, I think it says in Surah Al-Kahf. When the sur is blown, and then فَجَمَعْنَاهُمْ جَمْعًا, we'll bring them together in togetherness. But then that's not, yeah, it's not a beautiful Jam'a for many people. So then it's like, but God is, I guess, creating this image of raising and lowering, and that is the day when some people are going to be lowered and some people are going to be raised. And so in that reminded me of just the image of the mizan, and how each of us has deeds that are, going to be weighed in the mizan. So in that sense, khafid is actually a jamali name, because our scales being lowered, the scales of good, is actually good, right? Because that means that our good deeds are heavy. Whereas if it's rafa, or like if they're raised high, then that means that you don't have all that many good deeds. And then, but at the same time, so it's like this again, it's khafidatul rafi'a, because if the deeds are if the scale is lowered with good deeds, that means your daraja, or your degrees, are raised high. So God is lowering the scale of deeds and raising your daraja. And like vice versa. So if someone's deeds are good deeds, the scales of their good deeds are raised, then their daraja, or their degrees, might be lowered. And so it's like what you said, like about this paradox of sujood, putting your head down, but then you're actually being raised high. And the same image comes like with the mizan, like it looks like, oh, it's going down, but it's actually a good thing to go down. And then the other thing was about, I remember, like, there are some places, I don't know if this is like only like a Desi thing, but there are some people in like Amils in South Asia and stuff, they'll give you like a name to recite for specific things. And so one of the places, I think the only place that I saw this name being prescribed to somebody was for blood pressure. Like they had high blood pressure. So they said, you should recite Ya Khafid. And then, yeah, that was really interesting, because a lot of things, just like when we were speaking about Qad and Bast in terms of the, I forgot, what's it called? Systolic, diastolic, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even that, right? Like it's like like those are things that are, in terms of biology, they're very fundamental. Like both of these things need to be in balance. Like qabd and bast, like your lungs, the expansion of your lungs, and the contraction of your lungs, the expansion and contraction of your muscles, but then also the raising and lowering of hormones. It's like, yeah, it's the line between sanity and insanity, I think, in one way. And a lot of people who get prescribed medication for various mental, like, imbalance, like in issues of various mental imbalance, for them not having the medication really can be really, really triggering and debilitating. And the reason why it's debilitating is because that medication is doing, I don't know, one form of khaft or raf, right? Like it's lowering something, it's raising something, and then that's how, like, it's making them almost able to function in whatever society we've built, that it's built for neurotypicals. But yeah, it's like this thing also with, if you think about like gender, and if you feel like people who feel like a woman or don't feel like a woman, or look like what a typical woman should, quote unquote, should look or not look like, all of these things are to do also with hormones. And even sexuality is to do with hormones, and it's to do with it's to do with how high or how low they might be. And so it's like so many things which we think of as kind of like fundamental to who we are, like, the fact that our brains function in a different way from the brains of many other animals. We think that that's something that's like a distinctive factor, right, for us. That's based on, like, not largely, maybe like, but in a fundamental way, it is linked to khafid and rafi', because of how much God allows our brains to do certain things. And even love, like we spoke about this, I think, a few sessions ago, when we were speaking about the heart versus the brain and where the location of the mind it might be. And when we speak about love, like, there's I guess at least in pop psychology, there's like this idea of, oh, love is just like hormones or like chemicals in the brain, which partly might be the case. So then, but that is also something that we think of as really fundamental to us human beings. And that's also a function of khafid and rafi'. So, subhanAllah, yeah, that's all. Just some musing.
Yeah, no, that's thank you for that. I mean, I wax on a little bit too much on the abstract stuff, but you know, like I said, these sessions are experimental, kind of pushing the limits of language, at semiotic, epistemological. Like we're asking like questions that are like, well, how do we know this is true? How do we know this is real? How do we know this exists? And then we look at language and the Quran to try and ground us and give us an answer of some sort. So yeah, I mean, I think you're kind of speaking in the same light as me. That I mean, well, I mean, I guess how do you? My sense, I guess, is that you feel somewhat the same, right? That the high and low is kind of a paradox, right? Kind of, it's a necessary kind of way of thinking, I guess, in the real world, but or in the physical world, but in the real world, you know, what does that mean? And I've been thinking of it in terms of like, you know, how do I lower myself? What does it mean to lower myself? And I guess we can just jump into the Quran, because that's probably going to be the easiest way for me to kind of collect my thoughts here, and also kind of bounce off of what you said, Zanira, and what you've also said a few times throughout these sessions. So I think we could talk about parents here, but I also just want to talk about the general idea of the metaphor or the non-metaphor or the imagery that's used in the Quran with this root. So the first time it appears is in Surah 15 is, I forget. That's not Kahf, right? Is it Kahf? No, Kahf is 18. Anyway, so وَلَا تَحْزَنْ عَلَيْهِمْ وَاخْفِضْ جَنَاحَكَ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ. Right, so Allah is telling the Prophet ﷺ to lower his wing to the believers. And this is a phrase or an image that's used again with regards to parents. And in the famous ayah that says, you know, don't even say uff to them. Don't even say uff to your parents. And then the phrasing here is وَخْفِضْ جَنَاحَكَ وَخْفِضْ لَهُمَ جَنَاحَ الذُّلِّ مِنَ الرَّحْمَةِ. So lower unto them, unto your parents, unto both of them, the wing of dhul, which is also it's a synonym, I guess, for khafd, right? It also means like lowliness. So rough translation, well, we can just look at the translation here. Surah Hijr. Oh, thank you. And lower unto them the wing of humility, out of mercy, right? Janah al-dhulli min al-rahmah. So the wing of mercy, the wing of humility out of mercy. So be humble to them out of mercy. Not, and I guess that's an important point to kind of stress, that Allah says out of mercy, right? That we aren't, you know, subservient and humble and lowering of ourselves to our parents because they're better than us, right? Like that's not the idea. It's out of mercy and out of respect, you know, and out of love. But side note on putting parents aside for a minute, this imagery of wings, right, comes up, you know, at least 3 times in the Quran, with the sense of being humble, or the sense of like lowering oneself. And you know, when I read this again a couple weeks ago, I guess, in preparing for these sessions, I kept thinking about what Zanira would say about the fact that there's like whether or not this is a metaphor, right? Because there's no simile, there's no like language of a simile here, right? There's nothing that says like, lower what is like your wings, right? So I started to kind of really lean into the idea that like, we do have wings. What if we do have wings that we can't see, right? That are beyond our perception, right? A kind of aura or a kind of energy that spans, based on our individual capacity or our mood. So that was just an idea that I kind of like. Um, I wonder what you think of it, Zina. Do you think we have wings? Do you think it's a metaphor, or do you change your position a little bit here? I really like the idea, and I'm sticking with it. I think we have some kind of wings that we can't see in some way, but I think it could also be kind of seen as just energy, like I said, right, or vibration, or some sort of extension of us.
I don't know, but I mean, it's cool that you took it so seriously, that you took it to its logical conclusion. But yeah, no, probably. I mean, it's not impossible, right? Like, I mean, I'm not going to deny it. Probably. I mean, there's like some meditations that energy healers do to activate your energetic wings. So yeah, probably. But I saw this video of Habib Kazem was here a few weeks ago, and they got like this young man, I guess, to be his, because Habib Kazem was giving a tutorial on how to tie a turban, I guess, like Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam used to do. So then the way that this man was standing, like next in front of him, inshallah, I'll share it in the group, with like his shoulders lowered. It just reminded me of the imagery of the wings.
Mm,
And I think some like wing, like if you think about it from like a, what's it called, evolutionary perspective, I think bat wings are probably the same kind of bone structure as our arms. I think I'll have to look it up because it's been a while since I studied the evolutionary stuff. I'm gonna look it up.
Well, that actually reminds me of something else that I've been thinking about this week, or the past couple of weeks in relation to this name, related to Salah, but posture. So, I think a lot of people, I mean, at least for myself, never really had a good idea of like what it means to stand tall. And I think we pick up a lot of bad habits, I think, especially in the modern world, because we're so disconnected from the earth. So a lot of us have bad posture because we sit for so long, especially we sit staring at screens or our phones or whatever it is. And so but I think there's also like maybe a social misconception or a social idea that like standing tall is like puffing your chest out, right? You kind of stick your chest out a little bit to stand tall. And I mean, I think that's probably a universal thing too, right? Because if you want to be noticed, or if you want to stand out, you kind of have to stand tall. But what I found recently was that like the back actually has natural curves to it, and puffing your chest out is actually not good posture, right? It's not actually good to puff your chest out. The best posture really is to kind of imagine, and I think the phrase that I've heard a couple of times in like physical therapy or fitness circles is stacking your ribs. So the idea is to imagine that your ribs are like a cylinder, and they fall neatly over your pelvis and your pelvis bones. So you're not bending it, you're not sticking it out too much, and flaring your ribs. And then also you're not like hunched over, and and lowering yourself too much, right? So there's a balance to it. And I kind of think of like, when we stand in salah, right? That's kind of the most important time our posture matters. I kind of think of like the standing part actually is in a sense kind of like a lowering, right? Because you're not supposed to look up, right, when you're praying. I think I remember reading something about like if you look up when you pray, like you go blind or something. I don't know where I got that from. I think I remember hearing something like that. But anyway, it's one of the movements that you're not supposed to do when you pray, right? You're supposed to keep your eyes focused on like your place of sujood, but you should also stand tall and with proper posture. So I kind of think of that as like, when I'm standing, like my wings are like contracted almost, right? They're like closed in, and I'm like in a focused space. And then I almost think of that when I make sujood, when I lower myself, that's when my wings, or even like first ruku' and then sujood, first bowing and then prostrating, I feel like that's kind of like my wings slowly expanding. And then when I'm in the lowest state, that's when my wings are fully expanded. You can kind of say, at least that's the idea anyway. That I've been playing with in my head. So yeah, I've taken the non-metaphor idea very, very, very seriously, Zanir. So thank you again for that. Yeah, read narrations about sit and keep his gaze and his lap not going beyond his forefinger. Yeah, I've read that, like the sitting part, and this is actually something that I really love about Salah, is that there's a lot of nuance to it that that I think isn't talked about enough. Like besides the three main positions, right? Standing, bowing, and in prostration. There's a couple of other positions, and there's sitting positions, right? They're different sitting positions. So there's the one sitting position, or there are different sitting positions that you take between prostrations or between standing. So one of them, like between prostrations, you sit and your toes should kind of, this one at least is your toes face towards the qibla. And then another one of those sitting positions is after the two sujoods, but while you're doing the tashahhud part. And in that part, you kind of sit on your left leg or your left foot, and then you keep the toes pointed forward for the with your right foot. That's after 2 rak'ahs. So after a 2-unit prayer and during the tashahhud, that's the sunnah to sit that way, and that's called iftirash, coming from the root for farasha, which means to spread out, because you spread your toes out. But then, and most people know that one. Most people see that one, even if they don't know the name. But there's one other sitting position that most people don't know, and this is the final sitting position. This is after 2 prostrations, and it's only done for a 3 or 4 unit prayer. So you only do it for like Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha, etc. So it's the final position, and this position is called Tawarruk. And it's a little bit harder to explain. I can share some videos, I guess. But basically, you sit on your butt and you slide your left leg kind of like under your right leg. And this Tawarruk comes from wirk. I don't know exactly what the base verb is, but wirk means your thigh. So it's kind of like an expanding of your hip in a way, is the kind of sitting position. So I always really love that aspect of worship, because it's our as Muslims, our worship is so like legalistic, some people see it as, but it also just it just has a very beautiful form to me, right? Like it's very nuanced, and I think all that ties to the idea of like the illusion of high and low, We're literally putting ourselves in the ground, putting our foreheads on the ground, or sitting on the ground in worship, of our Creator, the Creator of all things, the highest thing on earth. But it's at that moment, right? Like the hadith says, أقرب ما يكون العبد وهو ساجد, right? So the closest that a slave is to his Lord is when he's in prostration to him. So that's just something else that I've been thinking about when it comes to khaft and raf, lowering and raising oneself. Okay, so the next kind of idea here, unless anybody has any thoughts on my whimsical little tangent on prayer and sitting and lowering oneself and the illusion of it all. Okay, so I'll just switch to the screen real quick. So the interesting thing about this name is how it made it to the list. So as I've said, I think a few times before, why can't I scroll to the left? Weird. Okay, that's better. So as I said a few times before, all of these names, well, as we discovered, I think about 10 episodes in, all of these names, the scholar or scholars that compiled this list claim that they all are present in the Quran in one way or another. So all of these names up until Al-Khaliq Al-Bari Al-Musawwir, and I think Ghaffar, well, yeah, this will be cool to update so we have the numbers right next to the name. But most of these names appear in the Quran at least once, at least the ones that we've gone through so far. Does anybody remember if I'm wrong? I'm pretty sure they're all in there. Or maybe not Qabid. Right? Is
I don't
Qabid
think
in?
Qabid. Yeah, I don't think so.
Qabid,
It's
okay.
just the
Yeah, but Qabid is in there with a verb, I think, right? I think that's let's just double check it real quick.
yeah, it's just Wallahu yaqbid wa yabsut.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Wallahu yaqbid wa yabsut. So I guess that was the first case that we came across that wasn't directly in the Quran. So that would be, about like 18 names, I think. Pretty sure all of these, Alim, Fattah, Razaq, Wahhab, Qahhar, I think appears only once, which is kind of fitting because it's, a very stern name, the compeller. But I think all of these all appear in the Quran. So the only one that doesn't, this is the first one that we've come across that doesn't directly appear in the Quran, but also does not have a verbal derivative in the Quran. So what it does have is what we had on the screen a second ago is a description, and you mentioned this already, Zanira, but a description of the Day of Judgment as that which brings down, and also that which raises up. So this is in Surah Al-Waqi'ah, and Allah is describing Yawm al-Qiyamah, or the Day of Judgment, as khafidatun rafi'ah, that which brings down and raises up. Or as the translation here says, it will bring down and raise up. So I think that's really unique because this is probably the most clear case of a name that people might dispute. People might say, no, that's not a name, because there's no verb, there's no noun, there's no noun form that's the noun form of the name is not in the Quran, and there's no verb form of the name in the Quran associated with Allah. The verb forms that we see in the Quran are not associated with Allah. They're commands from Allah for us to lower ourselves in some way, or for the Prophet to lower himself in some way.
Oh wait, sorry. This just reminded me. There's a hadith where this appears in a verb form. Can I read it?
Oh yeah.
Okay. قال قام فينا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال إن الله عز وجل لا ينام ولا ينبغي له أن ينام يخفض القسط ويرفعه يرفع إليه يرفع إليه عمل الليل قبل عمل النهار وعمل النهار قبل عمل الليل حجابه النور وفي رواية أبي بكر النار لو كشفه لأحرقت سبحات وجهه ما انتهى إليه بصره من خلقه. Subhanallah. Okay. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was standing amongst us, and he told us 5 things. He said, "Verily, the exalted and mighty God does not sleep, and it does not befit him to sleep. He lowers the scale and lifts it. The deeds in the night are taken up to him before the deeds of the day, and the deeds of the day before the deeds of the night. His veil is the light." In the hadith narrated by Abu Bakr, instead of the light, it is fire, that his veil is fire. If he withdraws it, the veil, the splendor of his countenance would consume his creation so far as his sight reaches. Sahih Muslim.
Oh, that's really interesting. I never heard that phrase before. خافض القسط. That's is that خافض and رافع or يخفض القسط ويرفعه?
يخفض القسط ويرفعه.
Yeah, so he lowers the scales and raises them. It's an interesting idea. I don't know what that means exactly, but
I think it could have something to do with what I was speaking about earlier about like the scales of our deeds.
Oh, okay. Well, that's
But then
interesting.
again, it's called mizan, right? Like it's not called qist. It's called mizan.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's like still a bit, I don't know. It's not for sure.
Qist is usually translated or associated with justice, like, God meting out justice, God, yeah, I mean, it could have other connotations. I'll have to think about that one a bit. But yeah, I mean, I'm not here to say that, like, oh, it's a name or it's not a name. It's just interesting that this is probably the most technical name I think that we've come across, because it doesn't appear in the Quran directly or without any verb. So it takes a bit of reasoning to decide that it's a name of Allah based on just the Quran, because Allah is describing not himself here, but he's describing the day of judgment as that which lowers. But of course, Allah is, the controller of all things, and nothing, happens without his permission and his leave. So it's not a huge, I don't think it's a huge jump, right, to make that kind of leap, but that kind of leap of judgment. But it is probably why some people disagree with some of the names in the Quran, which I don't think is a very fruitful debate. The 99 names are pretty old. I'm sure scholars much more learned and knowledgeable than us approve it if it's become so common nowadays. But it is an interesting point that it isn't directly found in the Quran. I think that's all I really have on Khaft here. We can look at the graph, the knowledge graph, one more time. See if there's anything that stands out. But like we can even see in the graph that it's a pretty minimal root. There's not a lot of cognates or not a lot of derivatives, and all pretty intuitive. So I mean, I guess circumcise is an interesting one to kind of think about. Khaft having to do a lot with like cutting, or not a lot, but having maybe in its simplest sense. If we try to apply one of these fundamental frames to this root or to this idea of Khaft, besides lowering and and raising, right? That's why I think that cutting and joining is so fundamental, because I feel like you can, except for expansion and contraction, all of the other frames seem to kind of be able to fit into that union separation frame, right? So like the idea of like lowering being a kind of like cutting or separation, I don't think that's really too much of a stretch, right? Or raising being a kind of joining, I don't think that's too much of a stretch either. Expansion and contraction, maybe you can kind of also associate that with cutting and joining, but it doesn't fit as nicely for me. So yeah, I think that's all I have on khafd. I did want to mention a little bit about parents, because it's part of the theme of this root with respect to the Quran, since each time or the 3 times that this root is mentioned in the Quran, it has to do with being humble or lowering oneself unto others. In the one case of the Prophet ﷺ to the believers, and in the other 2 cases with us normal people and our parents. So yeah, I can jump into parents real quick. I had like a short little story that I wanted to
say
share.
something before that, just
Yeah.
just from the letter. Sorry, it's from Al-Ma'ani, and I saw some interesting meanings. So it says, خفض الطائر جناحه. We
Mhm.
already discussed that. Then it's like خفض الميزان, which means نقص منه, to reduce something from the weights, from the balance. خفض شأنه حط منه. I don't know what that means. What's حط?
حطة?
حط, like hat and paw.
Yeah, I
Paw
think
shut down.
that generally means to put something, but I think it can also mean to cut something or crush something. Like
Yeah, it
حطم.
sounds like putting to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so then خفض بالمكان أقام به, to stay somewhere. And then it says خفض عيشه سهل ولان وتيسر كان هنيئا واسعا. So that's very Jamali, right? Like to have our life that is khafad, that's really easy and simple, and to be comfortable in wasi'a. So here, even though, like, so wasi'a is also kind of like bust, even though you wouldn't normally associate, I guess, khafd with bust. Then khafd al-si'ar naqasahu, lowering of prices. That's also Jamali, based on whether you're the consumer or the producer, I guess. Okay. خفض الصوت ألانه وخافت به لم يجهر به, to lower the voice. Then this is what you were speaking about just now. خفض فلان جناحه للناس ألان جانبه وتواضع لهم. So to become soft towards people, to become humble. Then this one's really interesting. It says, I don't know what it means. خفض الصبية خفاضا ختنها. Okay, I think that's circumcision.
Yeah.
But female circumcision. وفي الحديث حديث شريف قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم لأم عطية إذا خفضت فأشمي. No idea what that means, but yeah, what's ashimi?
I don't know. That seems like it might have something to do with circumcision still, but
Might have. It definitely does, but yeah. Okay, so this one's really interesting because it is in the context of when they accused Aisha radiallahu anha. خفض عليك أمرك, which means هونه. وفي حديث أبي بكر قال لعائشة في شأن الإفك حديث شريف خفضي عليك. And خفض عليك جأشك means سكن قلبك.
yeah, I think
What does that mean?
Sorry, say that again. The last one.
What does that mean? I don't know what any of this, like most of this means. I'm just reading.
What was the last? You said خفض جنبك. What was the last one?
Where did it go? Hold on. خفض عليك جأشك, which means سكن قلبك. But
Ja-
then in the hadith, في حديث أبي بكر قال لعائشة في شأن الإفك حديث شريف خفضي عليكِ. I guess that means like Allah made things easy for you. هونهُ, right? Yeah, هونهُ. خفض عليك أمرك means هونهُ. That God helped Aisha radiallahu anha by supporting her.
yeah.
And like but with the bara'a.
Yeah, I think this is a good place to also look at the partial root here. So khaf, the letters kha and fa, they don't have a lot of roots, but the main one that we get is a biradical or a geminate root with the same letter doubled at the end, and that generally means light. So like khafif means to make something light, khafif means to be light. Oh, interesting. It's one derivative is khuf. That's interesting. I wonder if Elaine explains why. What does boots have to do with lightness? Oh, there's like a whole story in this. Okay, well, I guess I'll have to take a look at this later. See what boots have to do with lightness. That's an interesting one. Yeah, I don't recognize a lot of these other roots, but yeah, khaft here I guess means to be silent or be soft. So similar idea again, coming from khaf. Khafr, I don't remember. Khafara, protect. Khafara, shame. Staghfar, to seek forgiveness. Interesting. So seems like a common theme. Khafsh, narrowness. Khafasha, sight. That seems odd. Well, this is definitely a sound that that warrants investigation. Which, just a gentle reminder, is a big part of this application, and the research behind it is to kind of map a lot of these basic two binary sounds, two radical sounds. So lightness. Okay, then again, that reminds me again that maybe that's another frame. Maybe that's another fundamental frame. Lightness and heaviness.
Can I read something from the Ma'ani? It actually mentions something. So it says Al-Khafid min al-Aish, which means Al-Wasi'. Subhanallah, like it's just, I don't know, it seems a bit paradoxical even that when we're speaking about Khafid as someone who lowers, but then it's saying here Wasi', the one that's really expansive. And then it says Al-Khafid اسم من أسماء الله الحسنى ومعناه الواضع من الأقدار. فالله يخفض من يستحق الخفض من أعدائه وقد يكون الخفض في الدين عن طريق الإضلال أو في الدنيا بإسقاط الدرجات. So I don't know what واضع means. واضع من الأقدار, like he places destinies, I guess. And then Allah reduces whoever deserves reduction from his enemies. So he reduces things from his enemies or lowers them, I guess. And then this lowering or reduction in terms of deen, it could be in terms by misguiding them, or in terms of dunya by isqat, cutting.
What?
Saqata.
Saqata means to fall.
Alright, falling, okay, yeah. Or by making them fall in degrees in the dunya. So it's like two types of khafd mentioned here. Not having guidance to be on the deen, and in terms of dunya not being in like a high ranking position, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, high and low is like in some ways it's even more fundamental than cutting and joining, right? So I mean, it's not that, I use the word intuitive a lot in our early sessions, right? Because it's like, okay, well, this is so intuitive. Like to believe means to become safe, or to be king or to be an owner. It comes from the idea of holding something, right? They're very kind of like, I don't want to say simple, but intuitive, or straightforward, or I'm running out of words besides fundamental and intuitive and base, and but I think the point is clear, right?
Maybe
I mean,
obvious, something that's
obvious.
obvious.
Yeah, I suppose. But I mean, I think at the same time, it's still, a miracle and a wonder that, these are names of God, right? These ideas point us to God in a very real and very practical sense. So, quick note, I think, on just on parents. I think it bears mention how much we owe our parents, how much how important the status of parents are in Islam, right? Obedience of parents is right up there with like obedience of Allah, right? Like in the Quran, that's where you find it like that, very often. وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا, and with your and excellence, and practice excellence unto your parents. And we mentioned already the ayah where Allah says, don't even say the word uff to them. And we mentioned how he says to lower the wings of humility unto them out of mercy. So this reminded me of the other corpus. I don't know if anybody's ever noticed this, but besides the 99 names and the Quran, I have one poem here. And this poem is one of the most famous poems in pre-Islamic Arab literature, and also even after Islam. And obviously, I'm not going to go through all the poem. It's also one of my favorite poems. I've memorized a few of their lines. There's actually a hadith by Umar ibn Khattab where he says, "Allimu awladakum lamiyat al-shamfara." So he says, teach your children lamiyat al-shamfara, because it has in it a lot of good virtues and a lot of like I think the wording in the hadith is فَإِنَّ فِيهَا مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ, something like that. So because indeed in it are the best of characteristics. And the poem is called it's not, I mean, Arabs didn't really name their poems. They kind of just refer to them by their ending rhyme. So or the beginning line. So أقيموا بني أمي صغور مطيكم. But it's it's called a lamiyya because it ends all the lines in the poem end with a lam. They end with a lu sound. So that's why they call it a lamiyya. So lots of poets have different lamiyas. There's different lamiyas for different subjects. There's, and also obviously there's different letters, because not every poem ends with a lam sound. You can have like a I forget what they call them for other letters. Lamia, Ra'iyya maybe. Yeah, like Ra would be Ra'iyya, or Kha'iyya for Kha. I think that's how they say it. Anyway, so this is called Lamiyatul Arab, right? So this poem is so famous that it got the title of the Lamiyya, right? The Lam poem of all the Arabs. That's how famous this poem is. And And even though it's pre-Islamic, like we find, you know, Islamic scholars and even Umar ibn Khattab himself recommending people read this poem, memorize this poem, and it's still memorized and taught to this day in Islamic schools and you know, in literary schools, I'm sure as well. So he has an interesting story. The person who wrote this poem, his name is Ash-Shamfara. That's his laqab anyway, or his his nickname. His actual name, some people is debated, but that's what he's known by the most. And I think the translation that I've come across means it means the thick-lipped one. So I guess he had big lips or something like that. And that's how he got that name. Anyway, so the reason why I bring it up is because he had an interesting story, and he's considered like the king of the vagabond, or what's another vagabond poets, or like not necessarily criminals, but outcast poets. Right? He was outcast from his tribe. And the reason that he was outcast from his tribe has a lot to do with his upbringing. So his father was a thief. Remember, this is pre-Islamic Arabia, and I mean that's just kind of how like a lot of people survived. You know, they would rob caravans, they would just steal from people, and his father was just like notorious thief, and he would even steal from like his own people. And it got to the point where you know, people were kind of fed up with him, and you know, they got together and they killed him. So after that, his mom, Shamfara's mom, she got scared that, you know, now he doesn't have a father, people might come after him. So she went and she found this man who was also a famous vagabond outcast poet, and his nickname is Ta'abbat Sharra, which literally means the one who put evil under his armpit. So that's a whole separate story on his own. But you know, he was also like, you know, a typical like bad guy, you know, for that kind of back then, like a tough guy, you know, would rob and steal and pillage and loot and all that kind of stuff. So he took Shamfara literally under his wing, and he taught him the ropes, and you know, and Ta'abbat Sharra was also a poet, so I guess he taught him some Arabic maybe, or Shamfara picked it up from you know, from his upbringing by this foster father. So after Shamfara, like they you know, the father, or not the father, but this foster father and Shamfara, they hit it off, so to speak, and like he taught him all his tricks and stuff like that, and they liked each other. So once Shamfara got up to like you know, man age, or once he matured enough, he swore that he would avenge
Stealing
his
age?
father.
I'm just kidding.
Sorry, what?
I said when he got to stealing age.
Well, no, I think they were already stealing and stuff like that.
Oh,
I mean, you know, he
then
was
what was
teaching
the
him all.
age? A barrier to then?
What? The age of what?
Then what was his age a barrier to? Like, why is it relevant? Because he was already stealing. So what was
Well,
his age stopping him from doing?
well, I guess. Well, also when he came of age, right? He made an oath that he would avenge his father, and he said he would kill 99 of the tribe that killed his father. So I just thought it was an interesting point to bring up, because these were, you know, pre-Islamic Arabs, right? They didn't have any religion, right? They were idol worshippers for the most part, and they were lawless, right? So like it was very common, like theft and murder, and these kinds of things. But despite all that, right, they still had these ethics. They still had a code, right? They still had um, they still had a way of life that was very important to them. So despite the fact that this guy was a thief and his father was a thief, you know, and you know, he would rob and pillage, and he you know, he would kill. as well, he still had this like respect for his father. He still had this like you know, huge kind of tie to his father, and he wanted to avenge him. And I just think that's amazing, right? Like, you know, even though they were, you know, lawless, you know, faithless people, they still had this like, you know, this sense of like morality, or this sense of like um loyalty, you know, to something, right? You know, all they had was tribes and their you know, and their family relations and their family ties, but that was still so important to them, even though they were thieves and murderers, and you know, uh yeah. So I just thought that was worth mentioning, because it's a cool story. And this poem, I have begun translating it a little bit, but you can find a short on the YouTube page that has the Lisan Lab sessions with some of my favorite lines in the poem. I think you can also find it on my Instagram if you look there. So if you're interested in old Arabic poetry, he has some really cool metaphors in here too. Um, some of the basic kind of ideas just to show you how much of a vagabond this guy is, right? Um, he got upset, and then he left his tribe, because, you know, they were basically sick of him, and they just stopped associating with him. But he has some really cool lines about how, like, you know, I'm leaving you, you know, I'm leaving my tribe, I'm leaving my people. I found another people, right? And then who are these people that he describes? He describes wild animals in the desert, like, you know, a hyena and like spotted leopard and like vicious animals as well. And then later in the poem, he describes like, you know, how he's managed without, you know, close family and close ties. And he says, I have 3 friends, right, that have kept me company, without, you know, without in what's the word I'm looking for? 3 friends that he's had that keep him company in lieu of his lack of family. And what are those 3 friends? A shining white sword, a tall, a long bow, and a heart, or as he says here, fu'adun mushayya, like a really uh, um, passionate heart. Fuad being like, you know, the heart that's impassioned or inflamed, as we talked about. And he has some other cool metaphors about how, like, this guy was really famous for like, and some people don't believe this, but they say like there are kind of people, or there are certain Arabs back in the day that were referred to as adda'in, and these were people that would race horses and beat them. So it's said that he would race horses or wild animals in the desert, and he would beat them in a race. And he has a really cool line later in the poem when he says that, like, you know, he doesn't wear shoes, right? He's just like barefoot in the desert. That's how he lives. And his feet are so calloused and so used to the desert life that when he runs, sparks fly from his feet when they crash into the rocks of the desert. Said much more beautifully in the poem, but yeah, just a quick segue there, because, you know, very intuitive topic that we have on the board, but I thought also related, you know, to family and parents, and how that maybe that's like one of the, you know, the oldest kind of humilities, or acts of humility that's ingrained in in our humanity as children of Adam and children of our parents.
Did you say, I'm sorry, did you say you translated some of it?
Yeah, I did translate some of it.
Do you want to share?
The
There's
whole,
only yes to that. So
what's the
it's a rhetoric question. You have to share.
Oh, okay. I mean, I can read it in English, but I don't know if that captures the. Let me see if I can find the document that I have real quick here.
As while you're looking for it, I wanted to ask you, when you translate it from Arabic to English, for example, how much of an imposter syndrome do you have? I mean, how much do you change the actual meaning? Because I've always wondered, when it comes to poems, I feel like there's a really short amount of, so because the phrases are short and everything, you really have to decide whether or not you want to capture the feeling, which would automatically change the phrasing and the words more often than not, or do you want to stay loyal to the original version and, I don't know, like bend all the way to, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough for sure. I think what I end up doing is I go through many revisions before I feel like anything is even close to like ready for it to be shared. And I think I start off as literally as possible, even sometimes like very awkwardly, because like verb order or word order in English and Arabic is kind of opposite a lot of times. So in Arabic, a lot of times it's VSO, right? So verb, subject, object. Arabic is very flexible, so you can do SVO as well, but VSO is more natural, and a lot of poetry is in that frame as well. But in English, that comes off really weird sometimes. So sometimes I do it just to kind of like start somewhere, and then then I'll go back and like, okay, reads really awkwardly. So like the first line here, for example, I haven't looked at this in months, so I'm not sure how it reads. But I also really like the Arabic. I don't know how to explain it, but when I read it, like it really sounds like some of the oldest words that mankind has ever heard. I'm sure there are older words, but like older texts and poems and stuff like that. But like this is so well preserved that it's like it literally it transports me to like the middle of nowhere in a desert. The way it sounds, I don't know how to explain it, but
No, I totally get it. So this is your translation?
yeah, this is what I have so far. Some of my favorite lines or some of the most salient ones are like 3 over here. وفي الأرض منأى للكريم عن الأذى وفيها لمن خاف القلى متعزل. On the earth is refuge from harm for the noble, and for those who fear disdain, there's seclusion. So yeah, I mean, a lot of work can be done to make this smoother.
I think you did great, actually, because I mean, I think you did a great job. And also in the first 2 verses, if you can just for a second. So incline to a people other than you, that has a lot of impact. I don't know how it was phrased in Arabic, but so yeah, maybe it comes off as bumpy, as in you probably kept the brethren, your saddles. What is saddles? It's like related to horses, I think.
Yeah, saddles are like
Okay.
the seat you put on the horse. Yeah.
So you probably kept like you wanted to stay loyal to the words. So it's
Yeah.
like an opera type intro, very Mozart style, very dun 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 dun. But that's how it feels. But no, I think it's a great great job you did so far. I mean, I totally get the vibe. As someone who doesn't know what it means in Arabic, because that's the point anyway.
Yeah, I mean, you can see even like Google does, the Google grammar check doesn't like some things, but it's a good example actually of how the inversion of like verb and because here the verb for the second line the verb is here in the middle. That's the only where I could really put it. But in the Arabic, it's the last word. So he literally is saying, "For indeed, I am to another people, or a people other than you, more inclined." Right. So like 10 years ago, I probably would have preferred writing it that way because, like, I wanted to be more purist and more true to the text. But you stumble reading it, it doesn't have nearly the same effect. So it's it's translation is not my forte, so it takes me a long time, but I do enjoy it. So yeah.
Did you attend so during this Ramadan, I think Mashraba did series, 1 month series, interviews or something. There were some classes with 2 very respectful professors that I cannot remember.
Yeah, I remember. Yes. I got their contact info too, and I at some point I hope to be able to try and get like a digital version of their translation, maybe in MindRoots, or maybe they could partner with like. I was actually that's good that you reminded me of that because I forgot what their names are. Well, does anyone remember what the name of the translation was?
Yeah, so one was something with Dr. Habib.
Yeah.
I thought that's such a cute name.
Yeah.
But no, because I can share on the group because I think they are recorded. So
Yeah, no, I attended most of those sessions, I think, and I really
Those
like
were
them. Yeah, it was really great.
they really went into all the they were really open to talk about how they decided on which words. I mean, translating the Quran, I think it was just, and it's like such a huge responsibility. I was, I don't know how they did it, honestly.
Yeah, so it took years, right? So yeah, I mean, yeah, thank you for reminding me about that. I should try and connect them with Quran.com in the meantime while I'm while until I get ready to get Quran translations in the app.
I shared it in the group chat.
No. Oh,
Yeah.
thank you. So yeah, that was just my little sidebar on poetry and humility before parents. Well, I could share one more line from this poem that I really like. Actually, it's like one of the most wild metaphors that I've ever come across. But yeah, so here when he talks about like his 3 friends. So he says, "And I'm sufficed from the lack of one who neither repays with kindness nor is comforting in their closeness, by 3 friends, a brave heart, a shining white sword, and a tall yellow bow." And then he describes the bow in one more or 2 more lines, right? And he says, "هتوف من الملس المتون تزينها وصائع قد نطت إليها ومحمل إذا زل عنها السهم حنت كأنها مرزأة ثكلى ترن وتعول." So he describes the bow as susurrant, which is the best word I can find for what he uses in Arabic, which is hatuf. And I don't know, Neri, you might have heard this before or a similar word, because we say hatif, right, in some dialects for a phone, right? So I had never come across this word before. So hatif is that active participle agent form fa'il, right? So it refers to, but we use it to refer to a phone because I guess it kind of talks for you, right? Hatafa means to like make a noise, or that's the base verb. But he uses the fa'ul form here to describe the boa. And susurrant is the best word that I can find, and it means like making sound, right? It's like the simplest. I forget exactly what it means. Maybe you can look it up real quick. But it basically just means making sound, or something that makes like a slight sound or like a soft sound. So he's describing the bow as making sound, and it's also made from like smooth, like very fancy wood, adorned with patterns on it, and on the carrying band. And then this is the metaphor that he uses: when the arrow leaves it, the bow, whines as if it were a breathing mother, moaning and wailing. And so, as if he's describing the bow when it shoots an arrow as making a whining sound that's like a mother who lost her child. So it's just like, yeah, I don't know how to comment on that, but just very powerful metaphor, I guess, to say the least. Okay, so that's all for my poetic tangent. And
That's all? No.
I mean,
Just kidding.
feel free to. I think the link, the YouTube link with the or the YouTube short has the link to this document, I believe. So it should, if you want to read
It
as much of the
reminds me of, like there's some jokes I forgot, like, but there's some jokes on the internet where like people are really evil because when you were speaking about like, oh, even they have a code, but it's like some people they're like really problematic, but they'll be like, oh, but I draw the line at this.
Yeah.
Like I'm racist and this and that, but I draw the line at this. So it's so interesting to see where certain people draw the line because if you think about it, it's a violation. Like if you think about like what's going on in terms of ethics, it's a violation of milk, right? It's a violation of something that is being owned. So, like, that's what his dad did. He violated the rights to ownership of people who own certain things, right? And he took them without help.
Right.
And then his life is taken without help. Like, the
Yeah.
same thing happens to him, but it's like on a life level. And then suddenly it's a problem. So, like, for him, I mean, but he's okay with like violating the properties of others. If you think about it, like our bodies are property in a way, in the sense that we're given our bodies here to take care of. Nothing is actually truly milk except for God's milk. But yeah, like in a way, like we own our body in the same way that we own our shoes, I guess, or whatever else you own that his dad was stealing. But it's so interesting if you just see how much our ethics are. We don't like we're very out of alignment with our own ethics. I'm not just saying about him. Like even if we look at our own selves, like we'll find that anybody, like any human being, will find that we do things that, or we hold like double standards, basically. Like we do things that we think are values to us, but then we violate it in others when it comes to others, or even maybe our own selves. No, that doesn't make it any better or allowed. Yeah, I don't know, just something that occurred to me.
Yeah, so I think we can spend a little bit more time here actually, because this is a poem that is lauded by Islamic scholars, and even Umar ibn al-Khattab, like I said, told people to memorize it and teach it to kids because it has so many of these like good characteristics that everyone should have. And I think that's also in theme with lowering, right? And you also reminded me of something I almost forgot that I wanted to mention about like lowering. And I mentioned a little bit about pace, but I'm all over the place today, so I think I found the notes that I had on it. But I brought up this poem and this poet because of their humility or their humbleness when it came to their parents, right? When it comes to their tribes as well too. Like I said, his father was a thief, right? And he would rob even his own people, and they didn't really do anything for a while, right? He robbed like everybody, all tribes, but like he was part of their tribe, so they didn't really do anything to him for a while until it got to the point where it was just like, all right, we can't handle this anymore, so we gotta, but they still had that kind of like humility and lowering oneself to their their cultural values. And then so yeah, we can kind of go through this a little bit more because he lists a lot of those cultural values in this poem. So I think one of the most the most important one for him is when he talks about the excuse me, family that he's choosing over his own family. And he says, sorry, I need to drink something. So he says, وَلْيَدُونَكُمْ أَهْلُونَ سِيدٌ عَمَلَّسْ وَأَرْقَةُ زُهْلُولٌ وَعَرْفَاءُ جَيْلٌ. And I have apart from you a people, a different kind of people, a lion with a rough mane, with a roughened mane, right? Not just any lion, but like a lion that's been through it. And I guess Arqatu Zuhlul is a mottled serpent. I guess mottled means like spotted snake. And then وَعَرْفَاءُ جَيْلٌ. And then like a hyena, right? Hyenas are known for being like audacious. So he's describing these people as being preferred to him over, his own family, and the reason for that is explained in the very next line. هم الأهل لا مستودع السر ذائع لديهم ولا الجاني بما جر يخذل. So they are my kin, they are my people. These animals, these wild beasts are my people. Why? Because they don't, no keeper, seems wrong. They are my kin, no keeper of secrets betrays. So this is me being awkward again with the English translation, but basically saying they don't, and then more so, they don't abandon him. They don't abandon me if I do something wrong, right? Or they don't abandon the person that does something wrong, basically. So he's saying, وَلَا الجَّانِي بِمَا جَرَّ يُخْذَلُ.
So basically, if you're granted a secret, you keep it, so you don't just go and tell it in the marketplace. And then, if someone does wrong, there is forgiveness.
Exactly, yeah. They don't just abandon him, which is what his people did. I mean, he was, he killed 99 people, from like various tribes and stuff like that. So, it's kind of understandable that they kind of got fed up with him. So he's being a little bit maybe unfair here, but a lot of the history of this guy is a bit of a mystery, so we don't know exactly what he's talking about. But in the next line he says, وَكُلٌ أَبِيٌّ بَاسِلٌ غَيْرَ أَنَّنِي إِذَا عَرَضَتْ أُولَى الطَّرَائِدِ أَبْسَلُ. So he's saying that, and each of these new family members that I have, they're noble, right? They're valiant. They're fierce. They're not cowards. And then he throws in that, but I'm still more valiant. I'm still more noble and fierce than they are. Or at least what he says, when the first prey appears. So when it's time to get serious, I step up. And then he immediately switches to another point of like what scholars would call as like a point of adab. وإن مدت الأيدي إلى الزاد لم أكن بأعجلهم إذ أجتع القوم أعجلوا. And if hands stretch to provisions, I'm never the quickest, right? I'm never the quickest to grab food, even if this is a wrong translation. It shouldn't be greediest. It should be brave, really, or bravest. So he's saying that even if the most brave or the toughest in the pack are the first to grab food, I'm not the quickest. Right, so I'm reserved, right, and I don't jump and like stuff my face with food. So again, another reason why this poem is praised by Islamic scholars. The next line he says, وَمَا ذَاكَ إِلَّا بَسْطَةٌ عَنْ تَفَضُّلٍ عَلَيْهِمْ وَكَانَ الْأَفْضَلُ الْمُتَفَضِّلُ. So he's saying, and this isn't this me not being like, hurrying to grab food first, when I'm around others is a good character. He's just affirming that this is a good characteristic. And you might notice here that the phrasing here is a phrasing that is commonly found in the Quran, where he's saying, so I translate it as the best, this is a bad translation, but the literal translation is, and whoever was the best is the best, right? So often in the Quran you find this past tense when Allah is talking about, and Allah was the best, right? So that's a whole separate discussion. But it's interesting that it's a common phrase that was used among Arabs to use the past tense to kind of denote something that's like to more certain or give it more credence. Kind of like the way we say, it's a done deal or it's done. That's the best example I've heard of how you can use tense in language to make something more firm or more concrete. So then he talks about the friends that he has instead of his family, which are his heart, the sword, and then the bow. It talks here about more about like the pride in not eating a lot. So he talks about how he wakes up with an empty stomach, and he's not motivated or provoked by hunger. And then he goes into this whole thing about weak men, right? And he kind of he praises good character by pointing out bad character, which is a universal theme. And it's an essay that I've had on the back burner for a long time. The history and the evolution of the invective. Invective is like the technical term that you could use for like insult, basically, right? It's a whole genre of Arabic poetry called hija, right? Where the main idea is just to diss somebody. That is basically just like ancient diss tracks. That's essentially what it is. So I wanted to write an article or an essay kind of looking at some old hijat, looking at this poem, and then looking at some modern hijat, and see if we can paint like a big picture here. So he talks about how I'm not somebody that doesn't take care of their livestock. I'm not a man who just stays at home preoccupied with his wife, just chatting her up, talking about frivolous things. I'm not a reckless fool who's like nervous all the time, and he compares it to like a bird singing, rising and falling. I'm not like a flirtatious, idle person constantly chasing after women or constantly adorning themselves with like oil and kuhl, even though these things are, oil and kuhl are, sunnah, and some of these things are obviously like excessive masculinity or toxic masculinity, but not all of them. I'm not a weakling whose harm outweighs his benefit, startled and defenseless when I'm frightening. I'm not somebody who's bewildered in the darkness or clumsy, doesn't know his way around, the harsh desert. And this is where he has that wild metaphor of running in the desert and sparks flying from his crusty feet. This is another cool line. Udimu mital al-ju', and he says here like udimu mital al-ju'. Udim is like kind of like garnish, or like it's used for like food, right? So like the spice or like the the garnish that you would put on a dish. So he's saying he does that to his hunger, right? He prolongs his hunger and kind of like honors it and isn't shaken or disturbed or distracted by it. A lot of this, the rest of this translation is GPT that needs to be edited, just placeholders. So if I find some other ones that some other lines here, it's about 70 line poem. So if I find some others, I can share those in the group, because this is definitely one of my favorite poems, and I definitely encourage you to just listen to the Arabic. You can hear me reciting the Arabic verses on the two posts that I mentioned on the YouTube and Instagram, but the whole poem has this very like, I don't know, like ancient kind of feel to it that I think you can pick up on even if you don't understand the Arabic. Okay, I guess the last thing that I have on Khaft is, kind of a point that we've brought up already a couple of times. And it's just that I think one powerful way to think about Khaft, or to think about lowering oneself, is how we lower ourselves in general to anything. And this is why I had mentioned that, like, this name had made me think about, like, pacing myself, and how that's kind of been, one of my biggest challenges in life, to figure out how to, like, pace myself, not bite off so much or do much more than bite off more than I can chew, or do more than I need to be doing. So we mentioned how, like, prostration is actually, when we lower ourselves physically the most, right? There's probably the lowest way you can lower yourself. There's nothing else that you do really where your head is touching the ground. But at the same time, it's the most heightened you'll ever be. It's the closest you'll ever be to your creator, is when you lower yourself in front of him. So yeah, I think
So
that's
is it?
the.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No. Go ahead. Finish your thought.
Yeah, I
Please.
was just gonna say, I think that's the the main lesson that I've kind of taken from this name, is that, like, we need to lower ourselves unto God, just to kind of balance ourselves. It's not for God at all, right? Like, we all know that God is ghani, right? He's self-sufficient and doesn't need our worship at all. But it's for our own good that we lower ourselves to our creator at least 5 times a day, right? If not more, because we find ourselves being lowered to so many other things, right? Whether it's money, whether it's family, whether it's our job, whether it's even our hunger. We're not all like the poet that I just mentioned, who can go long without eating and be proud of himself. We're often lowered by our basest desires. So in that sense, worship, salah, lowering ourselves, prostrating, bowing before our creator, is essential to maintaining balance in our daily lives, or otherwise we're just pulled in so many different directions and spread so thin.
So
Yeah.
isn't it also like all the other names that have some opposition in them, or some polarity in them? How it's that the opposite actually interpenetrates the alleged polar. The yin is within the yang is within the yin, and they make each other what they are. And in the case of this one, I think the salah is a perfect example, but also it is the range of because we are the khalifas, we are vice regents of Allah in this cosmos, not just on the earth but in the cosmos. And in each of those positions, whether it's qiyam and standing, or ruku and sajda, we are establishing our understanding, our empathy for animal kingdom when we bow down on our knees. What is that position called? Ruku? No.
Yeah, cool.
It's Raku, and then the sajda for the plant kingdom, which is the
Yeah.
highest. But in terms of evolution, things started from plants, or plant-like life, to animal kingdom, to mammals, to human beings. So upright is humanity, the kind of the rare, mammal who only walks on, or who's upright, 2 feet, Kayam on 2 feet. And then when we are doing the ruku, it's the animal kingdom, the hewan, and then when we do the sajda, it is the plant kingdom, because they do sajda. And when we are sitting down, what is that position called?
I don't think there's a name, like just the regular sitting
Then-
between like the sujood and stuff.
Yes, between the sujood and when we do Atihatu Lillahi.
So, I guess I think maybe you stepped to. Did I mention this when you were here? Anyway, so
I'm so sorry. I had to go for my 1 hour, therapy.
No,
and
no,
there
no,
was
no,
someone at
no,
the
you're
door,
fine.
so I'm MIA except for the first 20 minutes or so.
Oh, okay, yeah, then I guess
And
I
that's
just want.
sitting that's the mineral kingdom, the allegedly inanimate, what we think of as inanimate world around us, rocks, mineral. So evolutionarily we go through the whole thing, and it's interesting to me that the highest point is when the heart is higher than the
Oh,
brain,
yeah, I never thought about that.
right? And the forelock is touching the ground, because the forelock is mentioned in the Quran over and over again, that he will drag the guilty ones with their forelocks,
Right.
right? It's and I guess neurologists would say, where is the higher thinking, the decision making, the choice actually happening?
Prefrontal cortex.
Exactly. And it's also, but it's the plant kingdom. It's the way the creepers, the are and or even an upright tree, the way it bows down, like the cypress tree, and it gives rise to the form paisley, right? It's supposed to be doing a sajda.
Paisley.
Yeah, paisley comes from the idea of a cypress tree. A sarv, I don't know how you say it in Arabic. In Farsi and Urdu, it's saru or sarv. The tree
Oh,
is called sarv, or I think it's similar word in Arabic. But it's when it bows down in the wind, we think of it as doing sajda.
oh.
And that's
wait,
where the paisley comes from.
So you mean the paisley, like the design?
Paisley, the design, not Paisley, the
Ah.
Scottish village, which took our Kashmiri, pashmina, and it started copying our designs. They originate in Central Asia at that time, Iranian, larger Iranian empire, Khorasan. But what we now call Paisley is what the British stole from Kashmir. And
Yeah,
it's then spread all over South Asia as well, North India, Pakistan,
right. So what would be the more appropriate term? Because paisley is the colonialist term, right?
So in Farsi, the original place, and as well as in Kashmir, we call it bute. Bute is a plant.
Oh, okay.
And
No.
and again, plant is that last state of sajda. So it's curved at the top. It's the curving part that actually makes it a paisley. Otherwise, it could be an almond shape, which is also a name that's used in Kashmir. It's also called abadam, the badam design or a badam motif.
I'll try to call it bute from now on instead of paisley.
Excellent.
We got to take our language back.
Decolonize our language back. So
Yeah.
there's this interpenetration that when we are the lowest, we are actually the highest,
Yeah.
right? And when we are expressing our oneness, our understanding, our regency with the plant kingdom is when we are highest. But then it's also the from the embryonic stage, it's like in the reverse, right? We're kind of like a little inanimate little clot, and then kind of like a plant like with the stem going through, which could be the main stem, the root of a plant, and then it's like a fish, and then a fish to a mammal, and then a human being, all in the mother's womb, right? So there is that. I guess what we say that the cosmos is also contained us. It's not only in the contents, but in the process as well. We contain the evolution, the process of formation of the whole cosmos is mimicked in our bodies as well, and
Yeah.
in what we are told to do with our bodies, right? This is what we are told to do. This is what we are taught to do with the bodies.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's
and
I-
grounds us. It literally grounds us because it does. We're physically electrical creatures, and when we put our head to the ground, it actually grounds us because we are doing that electrical job as well. We are grounding ourselves in very material way as well.
Yeah, 100%. I think and I think by going through khafd, I think we all or by going through al khafd, we kind of automatically go through a rafi', right? They're kind of
Yes,
you know
and the
two sides
elevation
of the
of
same
love,
coin.
the rafia of love, because we also do it for our children. Guys, you know how the Prophet and we also, when we have our little kids, climb our backs and we walk like horses for them, right? When they ride our backs and we're crawling on the ground,
Right? Yeah.
right? And the Prophet is famously known to do the same with Hazrat Hassan and Hazrat Hussein, alayhi salam,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
it's
Absolutely.
we are doing the khaft, but it is with the elevation of love because it's love. It's like super sweet love that makes us lower ourselves. And in that depth of purity of that love, it's not really lowering ourselves, even though physically it is. It's actually elevating like Allah because He loves us. We're mimicking Allah in that. We're performing a sunnah of Allah in His love for His creatures. I don't know if I'm making sense.
No, absolutely. I think when it comes to these very intuitive ideas, I try to just branch out into all these different directions, but they're very intuitive, so it doesn't leave us a lot of abstraction or much to think about because they're so intuitive. But yeah, I think we're all saying the same thing in different ways, maybe.
Yeah.
Um,
And even the hafid, the close connection with the word hafiz or hafid, right? As the protector.
mm. So
It's just
the
the
letters
dot.
are.
Yeah, it's just the dot. If the dot was not there, what
Well,
would it be?
well, that's a different. The last letter is different. So it'll
Oh,
be
you're right. Oh, you are right.
yeah,
It's because of our Urdu that we collapse everything into the same. You're absolutely right.
yeah. The dot is
The dal is
often
the
is
other dha. Yeah,
yeah,
it's the
yeah.
dha of Abu Dhabi.
But they're still not very far from each other. Like they're still like the dad it's still pretty close to the va. Right? They're
Yeah,
still very like heavy
yeah.
heavy sounds.
But it's
Um,
still a different. It is a different word.
yeah. Yeah. But
Oh, my voice is so soothing. Can you record podcasts for me so I can listen at night? My whole nervous system calmed when you talked.
Me or Omar?
My body.
I think we're gonna finish early today, so I'll have enough time to finally catch up on some of the uploads that I'm missing because I haven't uploaded for weeks. I think so. I think I can get that done today, inshallah. But we can look at Rafa real quick, see if there's anything that kind of stands out. But again, I think we kind of covered all of it by
Training. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, in Arabic, there's a saying, an old saying, "الأشياء تعرف بضدها." So things are known by their opposites.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Antithesis.
antithesis. Yeah. Um, so yeah, I think this is a good place to end then, unless anything strikes anybody here. Or there's any thoughts? Of course, we can always continue the thoughts in the converse in the chat, and I'll share some stuff that I think maybe Mara and Homapa you missed.
I'm so sorry, Johnny. I really did
No,
miss
no,
the bulk
no,
of it.
no, I'm like all over the place this week. So it'll be good to have some concrete notes down because it'll still be months before we can get a transcript for this session. I should be able to have one today for I think a session from like 10 weeks ago.
Yeah.
But just really quick, I guess I'll just go over the thing that the update to this app just really quickly in case anybody wants to participate, or I can also make it into like a quick little short later. But so you can do it from anywhere in the app as long as you're in the advanced mode. So if you're in the advanced mode, you can click on any node. I mean, the only ones that we really care about are the red ones, so the word nodes. So you can click on the inspect node here, and you'll see this node inspector come up, and here's where you can well, for root, I clicked on root by accident, I guess. But yeah, for word nodes, the red nodes, where there are shades of red, so you click on the node inspector and you can edit some properties and approve them. So this is going to be really useful for me mostly because I need to validate this property for all the words so we can do some interesting search stuff. But if you're bored and you want to check to see if you know the Spanish or the Urdu or the transliteration or the English is good, you can also see the entries here. So some pounds where entries. This is a definition. This is from Lane, so you can look at this to kind of help you if you're doing the English, if you're looking at the English translation. So like this is probably not a good translation for Rafi' here, but you know, it's all tricky, like what you would call it, like razor. Like we don't have a word in English that fits very neatly with this name. I mean, we translate the name as the exalter, right, or the one who exalts, but in a literal sense, it just means to, like, you know, raise somebody up, or raise something, or one who raises something up. So, you know, we can call it that. And I'm gonna add like a contact us or report issue thing, but basically, you can edit these properties. So let's say, for example, we just change this to razor, maybe one who raises. So you can put that in there. You can
Maybe
put
even raises high because you raise kids as well, right? You can raise a baby goat.
yeah. I mean,
Does it have the same sense of elevating?
I mean, the only thing here is that this is a noun. This is an active
okay.
participle. Yeah, so
Okay.
that's why I was thinking razor or one who raises high. But yeah, I mean,
I
there's
don't know.
some consideration here for like how long you want the label to be.
Brevity. Yeah.
Yeah. If you want to make it shorter, but yeah. Again, the main thing is the wazn. So like if you want to practice, the verbal pattern or the
That's super cool. That's super
Yeah.
cool. You have that new functionality there.
Yeah, so it should help me move through this a lot quicker. And yeah, so once you have it, you know, once you're confident or whatever it is, you just hit save changes, and then it'll actually write to the database, and you can see the changes, you know, live. So if we add English here, should see one who raises immediately on the graph, which is very exciting. But this is me being a geek. And then also, of course, you can navigate from the inspector. So you can just go to the very next word in the root. It'll jump to the next one. This is a little bit buggy. So if you find some issues that I don't see, then you can let me know. But at the very, yeah, so it looks like there's some issue here where the navigation isn't working exactly. But it does work at least for each individual word. So I'll post more about this in the group, inshallah. But sorry. So like if you expand this, for example, you know, any of these words we can take a look at and edit the wazn for, or the English or the Spanish.
I think another thing that you could add would be that numerical value, not you know, because when I see the number there, I immediately thought of the abjad value, but this
Ah,
probably is more like a pointer. But if we have then an abjad value of each name, that could also be cool
oh yeah, that would be a good idea. I can add
and
that.
very easily done with
Yeah,
an
yeah,
abjad thing.
yeah. I can probably just calculate all
Yeah,
the values
yeah.
for all the words. Pretty easy. Okay. Yeah, I think that's all. I'll post more information about it in the group, because I think there were some other people that were interested in helping with the data validation. So I'll repeat this.
Congratulations on the app.
Congratulations. Yes,
Yeah.
mashallah, mashallah.
Mashallah.
Really coming along. Alhamdulillah.
Yeah. In only a few
Alhamdulillah.
months.
Yeah.
You didn't take a
Yeah.
summer break at all.
Yeah. No, I mean, I mentioned this, I think, a month ago, but I thought the fastest way to do it was with else, but so quickly that I was able to do it in the
You're
other day.
cutting off, Omar brother. Is it just me or Mara? Did you
No, it's
also
also me. It's also at me.
Yeah.
So Omar brother, yeah. Oops.
Yeah,
again.
I've some internet issues today. Let me try. Did I lose everybody?
No.
We're here.
Okay, all right. Yeah, my internet's been a little weird. Yeah, Jazakumullah khair. It's
Yeah, and I love
yeah, like
the fact that you've added the poetry section to it as well. Alhamdulillah.
oh yeah, that's been there for a while, but
That's
there's
been
only
there,
one
yeah.
poem. Yeah, it's just the one poem. So yeah, you missed this. So I'll try to upload this today. But I went into basically, I kind of tried to relate this to the whole like honoring your parents thing, and I talked about this poem and the poet,
Yeah.
because he's a pre-Islamic poet. But I'll try to upload that today, inshallah. So if you're curious, it's one of my favorite poems. It's one of the oldest poems in Arabic literature. I guess what last thing for me, I think, in the spirit of al-Khafid, really is this idea of like pace and like, Khaft means lowering, but it's also
lowering your pace as well.
yeah, lowering your pace, right? I think that's kind of the thing with me and pace. I think I mentioned like in the beginning is like, the lesson I've been trying to get from this name is I think pace is one of the most. I think once you achieve a certain level of mastery or a certain level of skill or expertise or whatever it is, the next challenge and the next challenge that you'll face for the rest of your life, and not even just skill, but like even within like your any kind of practice, really. Once you've kind of developed an insight or a familiarity with some kind of practice, pace is the next challenge, right? Like that's the next thing to really like find a pace, find a rhythm. And I think for me, maybe like one of my weaknesses that I maybe noticed and that I think I can work towards is like closing, right? Closing things, right? Sealing the deal. Ending these sessions, right, and ending in a place that makes sense, that kind of, instead of just cutting things off or just dropping things or just suddenly moving on to something else. So I think one of the best ways to do this is to look forward, look ahead, look at what's coming, and kind of try and prepare yourself a little bit. And I think that's a pattern that you see a lot in art, a lot in poetry, a lot in the Quran, of course. The inversion, right? The ABBA structure, the flipping of the inside on the outside. So I try to keep that in mind. But yeah, so next week is also like a paired name, Al-Mu'izz and Al-Mudhil, right? So the one who gives izzah and the one who gives lowliness. So again, very close in theme to Al-Khafid and Al-Rafi', the one who raises and the abaser. but maybe with a slightly different shade of meaning. And yeah, I'll look forward to that discussion, inshallah, and see where that takes us.
Yes. Yes. So see you next week, inshallah.
Yeah, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair, everyone, for
Have a
for
beautiful weekend and happy Rabiul Awwal.
oh right, yeah, that's a real hour.
Okay.
All right,
Okay.
Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum,
Jazakallah
everyone.
khair. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.